In the Old Testament, Moses asked the Israelites to choose life. Is the Pope's Academy for Life asking Catholics to choose death? Well, the Twitter mob is stoning Archbishop Paglia, the president of the Pontifical Academy for Life, for supporting or seemingly to support assisted suicide. Jules, what actually happened?
An almighty row has broken out on the internet, Brad, after Archbishop Vincenzo Paglia, who, as you said, is the president of the Pontifical Academy for Life, gave a lecture, an extremely well-worded lecture, if I may say so, at the International Journalism Festival in Perugia, Italy, on the 19th of April. A left-wing newspaper, Il Riformista, posted the text of his lecture on Saturday, I think, and on Sunday, a number of social media and Catholic media commentators picked it up, looked at the headline, which says the time has come for a law on assisted suicide, looked at the last paragraph where Archbishop Paglia refers very specifically to a recent Italian law on assisted suicide, and they just ran with the assumption that Paglia was supporting assisted dying. And all hell has broken loose.
Okay, well, what did the Archbishop actually say in his speech?
Well, ironically, the Archbishop was calling for a law so that we will not have, a lawless, old Wild West, as it were, out there with, babies, children, psychiatric patients, the homeless people, as in Canada, being sent to, the injection chamber where they will be slaughtered at the altar of economic convenience. And that is why Paglia was calling for a very carefully worded law. He was pleading for relational autonomy, and I'll explain this in the light of previous Italian fascism, to replace what he calls medical paternalism, where the state, as in 1930s fascist Italy, decided everything for you and your life. You were alive for the good of the state. Now, he also called for nuanced the term self-determination, which has become so popular in common parlance today. And he said that if you're talking about self-determination, it must always be in the light of our relationships with others. And this self-determination business can go out of hand, he said, because, what seems like a person taking his own decision and say, I am deciding to die, could very well be because of huge pressure from other people, particularly economic pressures. He then talked about freedom, and he said that, ironically, freedom to choose is actually being eroded in the name of freedom. And then he called for accompanying a person in terrible, in this terrible state of perhaps somebody like a quadriplegic who has absolutely no chance of recovery, offering a palliative medicine and working towards the end, by which people will no longer, in most cases, feel the need to demand euthanasia.
Okay, well, just, you had an extended meeting with top officials at the Pontifical Academy for Life just on Friday before this whole media storm broke out. What was your impression?
That was almost providential, because I had a meeting with top officials, who are philosophers and ethicists, and they categorically told me that they were Catholic. They were totally committed to life and to Catholic magisterial teaching. There was no compromise on that. They also explained how these issues were hugely complex, not black and white. And, I've been a pastor for 25 years, and I know this with people in your congregation be put on life support, brain dead for 40 days. What do you do? And they said that there was a big difference between how we in Europe discussed these matters, understood the complexity of this whole thing compared to a more American audience, which wanted something, just black and white, and wanted things dished out to them very simplistically. It was an immensely rewarding meeting.
Well, now, we'll push pause for just a second on Pontifical Academy. Didn't Pope Francis appoint pro-abortion and pro-contraceptive personnel to staff this academy?
If you're referring to the, world-famous economist Mariana Mazzucato, most definitely yes. And I asked them about it. Now, you must understand that, these appointments come directly from Pope Francis. Moreover, what they explained to me was that Catholics often confuse this academy to be a magisterial academy. It's not a magisterial academy, it's a scientific academy. And because the topic is of life, it just doesn't concern Catholics. The whole world, every human being is or must be concerned about life issues. And therefore, if there is somebody who is outstanding, in a particular field, they would like to include that person, to hear that person's views, to help make a bigger impact on the wider world. And they told me quite honestly, well, we're not going to get Mariana Mazzucato to draft a paper on abortion, for that matter. So given their explanation on why they do this and the fact that this is a scientific academy, that seems rather plausible.
Okay, so dialing it in here for the audience, what's the overall ethical issue under consideration when it comes to assisted suicide?
Well, what we're dealing here with, Brad, is as scientific and medical technology has advanced beyond the wildest sweep of our imagination, we are talking about medically assisted dying because there is now medically assisted living. And you can prolong the life of a person artificially, unnaturally, for years, sometimes decades, which in a normal context of, what we might call natural circumstances, allowing nature to take its course, that person would be dead. In this new context, how does one approach euthanasia or assisted dying? And that is where Italian law, with very fine judges who are, taking, first of all, Catholic teaching, even if they are not Catholic, because of the sheer weight of Catholic theology on this country and its history, are taking philosophical and ethical issues into consideration, and also, interestingly, taking the fascist context and almost attempting to push back at the 1930s fascist laws in this country, some of which were very good, by the way, and some of which were not so good. And it is in this light that Paglia, it is in this light that the Italian Constitutional Court pronounced a verdict 242/2019. That was the number of the case, dealing with a quadriplegic person who went to Switzerland, was taken to Switzerland and committed, and died there, committed euthanasia. And this is the context that Paglia was dealing with.
So finally, as near as you can tell, Jules, how does Pope Francis himself view euthanasia?
Pope Francis, again, is categorically against it. There has never been a time when he has sent out mixed signals on euthanasia. Paglia will talk about accompaniment, I don't know if Pope Francis has said that. Some bishops' conferences around the world have talked about accompaniment with palliative care in the context of euthanasia. But Pope Francis has always been categorically opposed to assisted suicide.
Well, you know, it's not often you actually come out in defense of Archbishop Paglia, given his track record. Thank you, Jules, for your fair and honest reporting.
Thank you, Brad.